You put it on in the morning. You rub it into your shoulders, your nose, the back of your neck. You feel that faint, greasy layer settle onto your skin, and something in your brain quietly whispers, done, protected, safe for the day. Then you go to the beach, or you sit by the pool, or you just walk to your car and back again and again under a sun that never asked your permission to keep burning. And here's the strange part. Somewhere around hour 2, your sunscreen has already stopped working. Not completely, but enough. The UV filters are breaking down. The water washed some of it off. The friction from your towel rubbed away more. Your skin right now is far less protected than it was 90 minutes ago. But you don't feel it. You don't see it. There's no signal, no sensation, nothing that tells your nervous system, reapply now. So you don't. You just keep sitting there in the same spot, in the same sun, trusting a decision you made 2 hours ago as if it were still true. This is the moment we never notice. Not the sunburn itself. That comes later, and by then it's too late to matter. The real moment is earlier. It's the quiet, invisible gap between feeling protected and actually being protected. And almost nobody thinks about it because our brains were never built to track something we can't see. Think about how normal this is. You've done it 100 times. You apply sunscreen once, in the morning, like brushing your teeth, a single act that feels complete in itself. Nobody stands at the pool with a mental timer counting down 2-hour intervals. Nobody checks their skin the way they check their phone battery. And why would they? There's no number on your arm ticking down from 100 to 0. There's no little icon turning red. The world doesn't give you a warning. So your brain does something it does with almost every invisible risk in life. It assumes that no signal means no problem. This is not laziness. This is not carelessness. This is something much deeper, something baked into how humans process risk when the danger doesn't announce itself. Here is the mechanism hiding underneath this everyday moment. Human beings are extraordinarily good at reacting to threats we can perceive directly. A loud noise, a hot surface, a shape moving toward us in the dark. Our nervous system evolved over millions of years to respond instantly to things we can see, hear, or feel. But UV radiation doesn't growl, it doesn't hiss, it doesn't leave a mark until the damage is already done, sometimes hours later. This creates what psychologists call an invisible threat gap, the space between a real risk and our felt experience of that risk. Our brains are built on a simple, ancient rule. If I don't feel it, it probably isn't happening. That rule worked beautifully for millions of years, when almost every danger came with a physical warning sign, but it fails completely against modern, slow-motion risks like UV exposure, blood sugar spikes, screen-induced eye strain, or long-term stress. These threats operate in silence, and silence, to your nervous system, sounds a lot like safety. There's also something called the single action illusion. Once you complete an action tied to safety, locking the door, buckling the seatbelt, applying the sunscreen, your brain files it away as handled. It doesn't naturally revisit that decision unless something forces it to. This is why people forget to reapply sunscreen, forget to check on a slow-cooking risk, or forget that yesterday's password isn't safe forever. The brain treats safety like a checkbox, not a continuous process. And this is the quiet trap. The sun doesn't care that you checked the box once. The UV rays keep coming. The same intensity, the same relentless rhythm, whether or not your brain has decided the danger is over. Now, this pattern didn't just appear yesterday. It's tied to something bigger. The way modern life has trained us to trust single actions instead of ongoing awareness. For most of human history, protection meant staying in the shade, wearing layers, working shorter hours in direct sunlight. Protection was continuous, physical, visible. You could feel the shade. You could feel the fabric. But somewhere in the 20th century, sunscreen turned protection into a single transaction. A bottle, a few seconds of rubbing it in, a promise printed on the label, SPF 50. That number became a kind of psychological anchor. People assumed that a higher number meant longer protection, when in reality, it mostly refers to intensity, not duration. Advertising reinforced the idea that this was a morning ritual, something you complete once and move on from, much like brushing your teeth or putting on deodorant. This framing made sunscreen feel like a one-time event, not an ongoing responsibility.
Add to this modern beach culture, poolside relaxation, long hours outdoors during vacations, moments where people are deliberately trying to not think about time. You're not checking your watch at the beach. You're trying to escape watches altogether. So the very context where reapplication matters most is also the context where people are most likely to lose track of time completely. Here's where the story shifts. Most people assume the reason we forget to reapply sunscreen is simple forgetfulness. We get distracted, we're having fun, life gets in the way. That's the story we tell ourselves. But the real reason is something stranger and more unsettling.
It's not that we forget. It's that our brains were never designed to track invisible decay in the first place. We don't fail to reapply because we're careless. We fail because there is no biological mechanism inside us built to sense chemical breakdown on our own skin. Evolution gave us pain receptors for burns, but it gave us nothing, literally nothing, for detecting the slow disappearance of a protective barrier before the damage happens. This is the twist. The problem was never human error. It was a mismatch between an ancient nervous system and a modern threat that behaves nothing like the threats we were built to notice.
And once you see this pattern in sunscreen, you start seeing it everywhere. It's the same reason people don't refresh their car's brake pads until they hear a screech. The same reason people don't monitor their mental exhaustion until it becomes burnout. The same reason relationships quietly decay. Not because people stop caring, but because there's no visible signal warning them the connection is weakening until suddenly it's gone. This is why some skincare researchers have proposed something almost poetic: sunscreen that changes color when its protection fades. Not because people are irresponsible, but because the human brain needs a visible signal to trigger action. Give people a color shift, a fading tint, a visual cue, and suddenly the invisible becomes impossible to ignore. It's not a technological gimmick, it's a direct response to a psychological blind spot millions of years in the making.
And this blind spot doesn't stay at the beach. It follows us into decisions far beyond sunscreen. Think about how many things in your life follow this exact same single action illusion. You update your privacy settings once and assume you're protected forever, even as apps quietly expand what they collect. You have one deep conversation with a friend and assume the relationship is stable, even as both of you slowly drift into silence. You set a boundary once at work and assume it will hold, even as new tasks quietly creep past that boundary, week after week. In every case, the danger is not that people are foolish, it's that humans crave closure, a single decisive act that lets us stop thinking about a problem. Our minds are wired to convert ongoing responsibilities into one-time events, because holding continuous vigilance is mentally exhausting. So we trade long-term awareness for short-term peace of mind.
This shapes attention too. We check things obsessively when there's a visible signal, a notification badge, a battery percentage, a text with 3 dots appearing. But we go completely blind to things that give us no signal at all. Emotional exhaustion, slow resentment, physical fatigue building over months, trust eroding one small disappointment at a time. None of these come with a red icon, so none of them get checked. And this quietly shapes relationships. Many people don't fall out of love in a single moment. They fall out of it the way sunscreen wears off, gradually, invisibly. No dramatic event marking the exact second protection stopped working. By the time someone notices, the damage already happened hours, months, sometimes years ago. Which brings us to something almost unsettling to sit with. Most of the forces shaping our daily decisions are not loud. They don't announce themselves with alarms or warnings. They operate exactly like ultraviolet light, invisible, patient, and completely indifferent to whether we're paying attention.
The single act of applying sunscreen in the morning feels like control.
But real protection was never about that one action. It was about continuous awareness, something almost nobody naturally practices because our minds were never built for silent, ongoing threats. Maybe that's the real lesson, hiding underneath a simple bottle of SPF 50. The things that shape our health, our relationships, our emotional state, they rarely scream for our attention.
They fade quietly, the way color fades from fabric left in the sun. And by the time we notice, the moment to act has already passed. The things controlling our lives are often the things we never notice. So here's a question worth sitting with for a moment. What is one habit you do every single day, almost automatically, without ever asking yourself why you do it, or whether it's actually still working?